What is up, everyone? I am here with my really good friend, Tim Highnam. He's a super awesome guy. Tim is a former national champion athlete, a former management consultant at Deloitte, and the founder of the growth marketing agency T14 Marketing LTD. And what I really love about Tim is that he is just the kind of person that is always giving value. He's so smart, just an incredible systems thinker, really great at connecting people and ideas. And Tim has added so much value to my life just through how he is and who he is and what he values and what he believes in terms of transparency and integrity in business specifically. And you're just such an awesome guy. I'm so excited and happy to finally have you on the podcast, Tim.
Hell yeah. Thank you. It's been a long time coming. I'm excited.
Hell yeah. So I think just to start off, I would love for you to tell a bit about your story and give people a bit of a background as to who you are.
Yeah, sure. So, where to start my story? So, as you say, what I'm going to do is I'm always going to go in reverse order, and you'll see why. So, as you said already, I am the managing director of T14 Marketing Limited, which is my company. I've done a few other things as well. And my path to becoming like an entrepreneur, with a team and everything, it wasn't super straight. Now, I've always identified myself as someone, I've always said like, oh yeah, I'm very entrepreneurial. I was a kid and I'd like buy sweets and sell them for cheap, from margin, markup, all that kind of stuff. When I was young, I always wanted to buy chickens in a chicken coop. And it was like an investment because I grew up on a farm, right? I was like, yeah, I want to sell the eggs and this is going to be my return on my investment. And my parents were like, you're not having chickens. I was like, fuck. So then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to buy a horse. And then because I live on a horse farm and then I want to breed the horses, right? So then I get like multiple paydays from the horse every time it has a foal. And my parents actually allowed me to do that one, but it didn't work out for a variety of reasons. But so I've always identified myself as someone who's very entrepreneurial. And I've also always had a tremendous fear about it because it's something which I was always like, yeah, I'm very entrepreneurial. But there was this massive resistance to going and actually starting a business. So I was doing all these different things and I was helping people with their businesses and in different capacities. But I had this tremendous fear about doing my own. And when I was 18, I was coming to the end of school, I had an option. And I was like, do I want to go to university? I can go and learn about business. Or do I want to go and work in a company somewhere where I can go and do business? And I was like, well, I'd rather go and do business. And if I go and work for a consultancy or a management consultancy, not only can I work in a business, I can work on improving some of the largest businesses in the world. That's probably a pretty good way to go and learn business. So I went at age 18, I joined Deloitte. I worked there for a little under 3 years. And, when I first started at Deloitte, I was terrible. Like I was really bad because everything was so overwhelming. Because I had like grown up in the country on a farm. I'd never really gone out and done anything. Like most of my childhood was just spent on the farm. So when it came to, like getting on a train for an hour every day or an hour and a half and going to an office with colleagues, going out for drinks after work, like going out for drinks was new. Getting on a train was new. Getting on a bus, that was a new thing. I'd never really done that before. Like all these very fundamental things were very new to me. And so it was a tremendously overwhelming experience. But over time, that overwhelm started to decline and I started to understand my environment a little bit more, started performing a little bit better. And it got to a point where I felt very constrained. It felt like at the first I'd been like thrown into this massive ocean and I was like, holy shit, and it's being thrown everywhere and I had no control. And, after kind of 2.5 years, I was like, I really understand this now. I feel like I can do a fairly good job at what I'm doing, but I am constrained. And I was getting some really amazing opportunities. People were giving me really amazing opportunities, for which I'm very grateful. And I was looking at it as like, this is really cool. but is this it? I remember going, well, like I've always said I'm entrepreneurial and I'm helping people with their businesses, but I'm kind of almost doing that almost as a substitute for doing my own thing. And so I was like, well, what if I formalized everything that I'm doing? I formalize like the working agreements I have with everyone and stuff. I make it into a real business. So I did that. And then about 7 months ago or so, I quit Deloitte and I'm full-time in the business. It's making money. Everything's good. And it was such a scary transition because suddenly I had to embrace the reality of like, well, am I actually going to go be this person I've always wanted to be? I always kind of considered myself to be, but not really be. And it was that kind of conflict of identity, which when I grabbed it by the balls and was like, fuck it, yeah, I'm going to go and do it. It put me into the path of how I got to where I am, which is a very, very rewarding thing. It's like a bet on yourself. But that's a little bit of my story to how I got to be where I am.
That's really amazing. And it's definitely a very scary transition to go from stability, security, the status of that kind of a company to really jumping out and making your own thing happen. And I just want to reward you for that and respect. And I know it's had its ups and downs, but to just see you keep pushing on and keep making amazing things happen is just so incredible. And it's been such a privilege for me to be able to witness that whole journey. So really incredible, Tim. Thank you so much for sharing. I would love to know what inspired you to go into marketing specifically.
The way my brain works is I'm not really someone who would sit down, work on one business for 20 years. That's not really how my brain works. It's not the highest leverage thing for me. What I really love to do is similar to what I was doing in consulting. It's working with a large variety of businesses, making a high impact where you're going and you're doing something very high leverage. And then you can step back, leave more of the execution of strategy to other people. And then it kind of proceeds, right? And you see the results and you tailor things and you tweak things, and over time things improve. That's what really drew me to marketing, or particularly a marketing agency, because it's the same thing. It's, I'm speaking to anywhere between 20 and 30 different business owners a week. I'm understanding all the things about their business, which is fun for me because I'm a huge business nerd. I understand exactly what they're doing, exactly what they're trying to achieve. I'm helping them in various capacities, whether they're working with us, whether it's just a consultation, and we're really pushing them upwards. And it's helping them see things in a different way. And that for me is the draw to marketing. So it's not so much about, setting up a marketing campaign, so much as where it positions me in relation to our clients and the people that I'm able to help and we're able to help. That's the exciting thing for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I remember we were having a conversation a couple months ago about business owner versus entrepreneurship and all those kinds of things. And I know that you're really excited about being in the operations and seeing where the holes are and seeing, okay, how can we systematize? How can we scale? How can we hire? How can we build? How can we grow? And all of those really awesome, nerdy business things.
Yeah.
Super awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for a lot of people, entrepreneurs, business is a means to an end. So it's like, I want to build a business to give me a lifestyle, or I want to build a business for X reason. For me, it's just like, I want to build a business and I want to work with people on their business. Yeah. The means is the end.
That's really amazing. Well, I would love to know, since you are in the growth marketing space, what are some common mistakes that people make when it comes to their marketing, and how can they actually, because I think there's so much confusion about, okay, what kind of lead generation, what kind of marketing works best for me? Should I go organic? Should I not? Paid ads? Like it's a crazy world for people to wrap their heads around. So what are some mistakes that you've seen, and yeah, just love to hear more of your thoughts about that.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that people mess up when it comes to marketing, when it comes to advertising, when it comes to business growth, is they're saying, like, should I do paid advertising or should I do organic? That's where they start their conversation with themselves or with their team. And it's like, well, why are you looking to do that in the first place? Based on how you've been currently growing your business, what's the potential for that to, for example, give you leads for your business, right? What's the potential for that? Do you need to optimize what you're currently doing? And you can go from speaking to 10 new prospective clients a week to 15. And is that all that you need to grow your business, right? Or is it, what can you afford to pay for a lead? Do you need, are you currently in a position with your business where you can afford to invest 6 to 12 months? You're not looking to grow immediately, but you're looking to build like a longer term asset for your business that can over time generate leads, right? But it's going to take a long time. That, for example, is organic. If you're in a position where you say, hey, I have $100,000 cash on hand and we're looking to invest that into business growth, and we've already sorted out the systems and we have all the stock or the team capacity and all that kind of stuff, and now we're looking to grow. It was like, okay, cool. Well, if you can afford to pay, a good amount because you have efficient processes and you have some kind of competitive advantage around cost, if you can then afford to pay more than your competitors to acquire a customer through, for example, paid advertising, now you have a real competitive advantage where, after the 1 to 2 months where we're sorting out your ads and getting everything profitable, now you can really start pushing money into ads. You're making recurring profit and you have a competitive advantage because you can afford to pay more than all your competitors. And so when it's, people are having those debates, like where should I put the money and all that kind of stuff, it's like, you need to know your numbers. Like, how fast can you grow currently, right? What was your potential for growth? Are you ready for growth, right? Firstly. Secondly, okay, so if you're ready for growth, what do the numbers need to be? If you're selling a product and you're making 10% profit on your product, and now you want to start doing some kind of paid acquisition, it's like you're going to go from 10% margin to somewhere between 5% and 2%, right? Or you'll be making a loss. That's surprisingly common, because people have these really, really narrow margins, especially when they're doing something like drop shipping. And so it's like, well, that's not really viable. Whereas when, a lot of things like software companies, a lot of people that invest a lot of time into building their own, really genuine, valuable product, and they have margins of 60, 70, 80%. That now suddenly that becomes a lot more viable because you can afford to pay more to acquire a customer or a lead. So I think the biggest mistake people make is they're so focused on what's the tactical thing that I need to do? They're missing the bigger picture. It's like, okay, so for our growth plans, we now know, because we've thought about it, that we need 20 leads a week more than we currently have, because we're going to bring on a new salesperson and that's what they need to fulfill that person's time. Okay, how can we go about doing that? What's the maximum that we can afford to pay as a cost per lead? Okay, cool. So it's $50. So that means we need to spend $1,000 on marketing because we want 20 times 50, right? And now we know at the beginning, it may be a little bit more than that. So perhaps you need to spend $1,500 a week, but then we're going to aim to optimize over time. So it's that bigger picture and the actual knowing of the numbers rather than just going, hey, I'm doing marketing. We're making Instagram stories and all that kind of stuff. It's, I think of it as why are you doing marketing? Are you doing marketing because I'm, we're meant to market, Or is it, no, you have a plan, you need to grow, and you know what the metrics are in terms of how many more leads or what your margins need to be and your cost per acquisition, all that kind of stuff, your close rate. If you're doing sales, you need to know what those numbers are, and based on those, what's appropriate for me. And then you can book a consultation with someone like myself or with another agency owner or even a freelancer, or yourself, right? If you want to invest the time and the money to go and learn how to do these things yourself, you can. And then you can make a plan from there, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a lot of people are just like, whoa, like marketing, let me go do the new trendy thing, instead of really being like, okay, I actually understand every single part of my business. I know the numbers. I know where I'm aiming to go. I know why I'm in the business. I know why I'm marketing. I know I have this plan and structure, and I've really thought about it. And I think a lot of people are just like, blah, like kind of like you were saying, well, I guess let me just throw some money here and see what happens, and without even really thinking about the implications of that and with the margins and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of the same for life, you know?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
So many people are running around going, oh, I'm just going to do this. And there's not like a plan or a strategy around it. It's just like, oh, this looks good.
Yeah, like, oh, what's the strategy for my life? Yeah, you recommended a really good book to me once. I can't remember what it was called, but I think it was from a Harvard professor who was a strategic management expert. He talks about how to apply strategy to your life.
Yeah, Clayton Christian is the man. I have forgotten the actual name of the book though. I can check it. I will check it and I will say it while I speak. But yeah, so he is I believe Harvard professor. He's at like a top US business school, and he's like a very renowned. He's now passed away. Rest in peace. But he's a very, very renowned business strategy guru, if you will, authority. And he's written so many like amazing books. Like I think The Innovator's Dilemma, or something like that was written by him as well. And
DNA.
Say again.
DNA.
Yes, quite possibly. It's something about innovation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
what he does in his book is he just goes through and he talks about applying all these things to life. He's like, you know, he's had a very successful life and all that kind of stuff. But as well as that, or beyond that, he's also, you know, he's working with all these different businesses. It's called How Will You Measure Your Life by Dr. Clayton Christian. And that's the book name. And, you know, it's like he's saying, well, what is success to you? Because it's so many people that they're going around, you know, like they're chasing money, you know, like, oh yeah, you know, like I'm working hard, I'm getting promotion, all that kind of stuff. And then they go home and they're miserable because their entire life is work. Or, you know, perhaps they make sacrifices and they're like, yeah, say my partner in my marriage or something, my partner is very passionate about work. So I'm going to stay at home, look after the family, and I'm going to let her or him go off and do the work. Right. But then now they're missing that career aspect in their life. And now they're unhappy because I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but they've made decisions which have let them into a position where they're no longer happy or fulfilled, and they're not getting all the things that they wanted or they desired. And the book says it kind of partially, and it's a strong belief of mine is that people don't really have a plan. Or it's like they kind of have a plan, and the plan's just like, yeah, you know, I'm going to go to university, I'm going to get at least a 2-1, and then I'm going to get some kind of graduate job in London, maybe in like, say, marketing. And that's the plan. And then, you know, they're like, you know, and perhaps by 25, I'm going to like find the one and get married. That's their plan. And I'm like, sure, it's a plan. But, you know, like, it's just a plan based on hitting arbitrary things that you think will fulfill you. But it's like, how well do you actually know who you are? Right? And the business equivalent is like, well, how well do you actually know the business and the market you're in and your own customer? But, you know, it's like, how well do you actually know who you are? What are your values? Like what do you enjoy? What are the things that you kind of like a little bit weird and you don't really want to show anyone, but it's like, it's kind of true about who you are, you know? And what I really like about things like Instagram Reels and TikTok and stuff is some of that like weirdness is coming through. So it's like people like walking through and it's like they're walking down the stairs and they're like, blah, blah, blah. They do that weird shit. And it's like, I do that. I don't publicly do it, but I know I do it if I'm alone in the house. I'll fucking like, I don't know, do a forward roll through the living room. Like I do that shit. I think everyone does, you know?
100%.
So it's like the shit, like who are you? You know? And what's important to you? And then based on that, and again, this is true for business as well, but based on that, what's the theory or the hypothesis that you can come up with about a kind of lifestyle that would be appealing to you, right? Because from my experience and experimentation, I've gone, like, I want to be this kind of person. It's like, I want to work really, really hard. So I'm working, 80, 90, 100 hours a week, working on a business, working full-time, an intense full-time job, doing a degree all at the same time. And I was like, yeah, like, I want to be that really hard-working hustler kind of person, very successful. And sure, like it was the plan that was getting me to where I thought I wanted to go, but it wasn't where I wanted to go. I was burning out. I was antisocial. I'm super extroverted. And so being antisocial is not a good thing for me. And it's like people just wander around without doing the proper sit down thinking. And it's really hard to do, by the way, really hard to do. And it takes a lot of trial and error and realizing things about yourself that you perhaps didn't want to know or you weren't ready to hear, which, attacks your ego and all that kind of stuff. But as you go through that journey of saying like, who am I? What kind of life do I want to live? Who are the right people for that life? Shout out Derek Moneyberg. Mm-hmm. It's like those things are so valuable,
100%. And I know that you've thought about that really in depth, and I have as well. And it's very difficult for people to have that time with themselves and to unplug, because that means that they need to face reality. They need to face themselves. And once they force themselves to sit down to really get to know what they value and what they care about, what they like, what they dislike, what kind of life they want to live, what kind of people they want in their life, well, they need to face the fact that they have to change, because now they have to face up to the truth. And people are so comfortable that they don't want to change. So people don't want to know about the truth about themselves or the truth about, certain ththings that are happening in the world, because they don't want to make a change because they're comfortable. And often you have to get to this point where it's just like, like you're emotionally kind of forced into it because you've just had this really low moment. And I know that you've thought really in depth about how to set up your life, and I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's that point on emotional leverage that you just raised, I think, is super important. And a mutual friend of both of ours, a good friend, Greg Santos, when he used to run his morning hustlers in the US, which was a 5 a.m. morning accountability call Pacific Standard Time, which, so for us in the UK, it was like 1 p.m. So it wasn't that bad. But at one stage, he was doing like meditations or like visualizations on those calls. They don't last like 10, 15 minutes tops. And he did 2 of them. Like, there's 2 which really jumps out to me. And I was like, holy shit. And then I went away and did a lot of those repeatedly myself, which really helped me build that emotional leverage to, for example, eventually quit Deloitte. And the 2 visualizations, I'm obviously not going to do them because they're 15 minutes each. But the first one was thinking about, imagine you wake up and you may recall this, right? Imagine you wake up and you walk into the bathroom and you're thinking about all the things that you should be doing, and you should be doing, for example, for me, like quitting Deloitte, really going to work on the business, all that kind of stuff. But you haven't done it, but only 1 day's passed. So it's kind of doesn't really matter. But you walk in the bathroom, you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, hey, like, how do you think about yourself? How do you look? How does the bathroom look? And you imagine that scenario and you keep repeating it, but the time frame gets longer and longer. So it might go like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And as I went through that, as Greg was talking through it, I was like, fuck. Because, like there were all these things like, going to the gym super regularly, working on the business, all kinds of things. And I was like, like after 1 day, after 1 week, after 4 weeks, after 3 months, no difference really. 6 months, no difference. After a year, the huge thing that I suddenly realized is like, fuck, if I continue doing the same shit for a year, procrastinating, not working on stuff, not doing the things that I really know that I should be doing, it's like I'm starting to lose faith in myself. And I realized that that's already starting to happen. You know, and then if I played it out for like another like 2 years, 5 years, it's like, yeah, man, like I'm done. If I don't follow through on the things that I know are really important to me, right, which then touches on values and all that kind of stuff. But if I'm not focused on the things that are really, really important to me, and I know they're important to me, but I'm allowing myself to be distracted, right, willingly or unwillingly, and I'm not focusing on the things that are important to me, what happens is you start to lose faith in yourself that you're going to do something about it. And like, think about like how important is the faith in yourself? Because if you don't have faith in yourself that you're going to do the shit that you say you're going to do, for example, and if you can't rely on yourself and others can't rely on you, which is something Nietzsche talks about at length, you know, it's like the ability to make promises, as Nietzsche says, is, now I've not read this myself, it was told to me. So it's secondhand information, third-hand information. But he said, the ability to make promises is what differentiates humans from animals. And if you can't rely on yourself and if others can't rely on you, then you're no better than an animal, which is deep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really profound. And yeah, it's crazy when you get into that space of, you know, losing faith. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. You know, Benjamin Franklin says some people die at 25 and they don't get buried until 75 because they've kind of bought into this societal narrative of what their life is supposed to look like and what they're supposed to do without really doing that deep work to get to know themselves and what they really want to do. And then you feel that kind of disconnect within yourself and you feel like you've got these two sides warring with yourself. And then especially when you get into this whole kind of hustler phase, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to work on all the things. And I've been there where I've been like, yes, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And it definitely led me to a point of like, damn, like, I don't think I can sustain this for much longer. And especially when you're in that phase, you tend to beat yourself up a lot. And I know that you've done a lot of work on your self-esteem and self-love specifically. And I know you've been on a very profound journey there.
Yeah. You know, it's I think I listen to a lot of music, but when I say I listen to a lot of music, I listen to a lot of music, but only a very, very, very small number of artists. It's like nearly all the music that I listen to is by Russ. One of the lyrics that he said, I believe it was him. Maybe it was NF. Doesn't matter too much. But I was listening to a song, and one of the things that they said in the lyrics was they were like, you know, if you, it's not going to rhyme, so it's not perfect lyrics, but they were saying, if you made a list of all the people that you trust, is your name going to be on the list? And I thought about it, and I was like, fuck. You know, so it's like, if you made a list of all your best friends, is your name on the list? And it should be, but it's probably not. So I mean, I wouldn't have even thought about it, but it probably should be, you know? And you know, self-esteem, there's a fantastic book called The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. You can, if you just search the name of the book and his name, or just self-esteem Nathaniel Branden, you find loads of good resources online about it as well, where he redefines and goes into, in his concept or structure of it, what self-esteem is. You know, I believe self-esteem is one of the most important things in life. You know, liking yourself, having self-respect for yourself, being honest with yourself, and you know, like, even if you don't like what you find, being kind of okay with it because you know it's going to get better because you trust yourself, you know? And so in all this work that I've been doing, I've been thinking about, you know, what are my values? What are the things that are important to me? And originally I had self-esteem at the top. It's now third. The reason it's third is because Like some people conflate self-esteem with ego, where they're saying, like, oh, like I'm the best. For example, you get like affirmations and all that kind of stuff where they're telling themselves like, I'm the best, or, like I'm sexy, I'm going to be successful, all that kind of stuff. But then they're not actually doing anything to go and do it. Right. And there's no point going and looking in the mirror and saying, like, I'm attractive, if you weigh, if you weigh 100 kilos and you're 1 meter tall, you're probably not attractive, right? And so, but like, do you still have potential to be? Well, yeah, probably. You can go to the gym, you can eat better quality food, you can, to do a whole variety of things that's less relevant to improve yourself, right? Same is true for business and study and academics and all kinds of things. And so you have to be truthful. Truthful is the most important thing in the world, in my opinion, because without truth, you have no basis to do anything. Like you can't have relationships without truth. You can't like run a business without truth. You can't do anything in life without truth. Right? That's number one. Number two, rationality. Because even if you have truth, if you're not rational, and if you're illogical, or you go, oh yeah, like I know that I'm getting bad grades, but it doesn't matter because I'm super smart and I'm going to be successful. It's like, yeah, well, no, you're not a dickhead, right? Because you might be smart, but you're not working hard and you're going to get shit results. It's got to be rational. And then once you have a foundation of truth and rationality, then you can have self-esteem. And those three things, in my opinion, are the most important things in the world, in that order.
That's super, super interesting. And yeah, I think just facing the truth and facing the facts is so difficult for so many people. And yeah, just really, really powerful. And it's so important to be able to love yourself, and that concept of being your best friend, right? And I know we have a mutual friend, Trilstein, who says, I know that I don't know if you still do it, but you were doing it for a long time, where every night before you go to bed, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. It's like, it's kind of cool because I didn't even think about that, right? But it's so true because I have done that extensively. And it's, there's so many like of these steps on a journey, and you get tremendous benefit from something. And then you stop doing it because you've achieved what you're looking for from that, right? Which is what I did with the recordings, which I'll come to in a second. And then I kind of just almost forgot about it. It's an important thing about, it's like, one of the things that, another belief that I have is, it's almost less beneficial for you to listen to someone that's 20 years ahead of you, right? Like 20, 30, 50 years ahead of you. It's slightly less beneficial than listening to someone who's like 2 or 3 years ahead of you, like 1 to 3 years ahead of you, who's recently gone through all your shit, because they remember all this shit, It's like, I'd even forgotten about that. What Yasmin was just saying, what you were just saying is what I did. I did this for over a year. I think I had something like 340 recordings from a year of doing this, right? So I was pretty consistent. It wasn't perfect, but I was pretty consistent with it. Is every night before going to bed, I would literally just like go on like the voice recorder on my phone. And I'd just be like, I'd literally talk to myself and I was like, hey, Tim. And then I would just talk about my day. And at the beginnings, like some of these recordings were fucking 20, like there are a couple that are 25 minutes long. Because what I'm doing is, and again, shout out Trilstein for coming up with the idea, I'm having a conversation with myself as if I'm my best friend. And I've heard other variations of this where it's like, as if you're talking to your son or something, or your father or your brother or something like that, or someone you truly loved, right? Imagine someone you truly loved came up to you and was saying like, oh, I had a shit day, I'm a failure, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you wouldn't just go, oh, yes, you are, fuck. Like, you wouldn't do that with someone you loved. With someone you loved, you'd be like, no. And you'd point out all the cool things. So it's like, yeah, you might not have had a great day, but think about it. It's like, you tried and you did this, and you pushed yourself into an uncomfortable situation that didn't work out. But like, kudos for you for trying. Because, you from 6 months ago, you wouldn't have even tried. You'd have just shied away. So what does that growth show you, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so the point of these recordings is you have that conversation with yourself where you're saying, I had a fantastic day. I'm super excited about tomorrow. Or I had an absolute terrible day. Like X thing happened and I'm super upset or angry or pissed off, or, a lot of jealousy and envy or whatever it may be. And you just talk yourself through it. And you want to end every day on a positive note, because the last thing you think about when you go to bed is the first thing you think about when you wake up. And so many people like lay in bed and they're just thinking about how terrible their day was. And they wake up in the morning thinking and terrible how terrible their day was, but also like how terrible they are and how much they hate themselves. Or they dislike themselves, they dislike something that they did, or something about who they are. And then they wake up and that's how they start their day. It's like, you think you could have a good day the next day by doing that? So it's a really, really powerful exercise where you can change that self-talk that you have. And I know that was something that was really transformational for me. That was one of a few things that I was doing, but it's so good.
100%. I've done it as well. And it definitely had a huge impact on how I felt after doing that. And it's almost like you're coaching yourself from a place of love. And it goes without saying that your connection with yourself is the most important connection. But one thing that I really love about you, Tim, is you are so good at connecting with other people. And, I've seen you just connect effortlessly and add value effortlessly to really high quality people, to the point where you're getting like multi-million-dollar mentors, like it's the easiest thing in the world. And I would just love to hear your view on relationships and how you go about building mutual win-win relationships with high value people.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm someone I always struggled with connection, right? I won't go too deep into it, but I always really struggled with connection. I felt like I was as a child, I always felt like I was never enough. I felt like I didn't understand people, and I felt like I had this, I don't know. I felt like there was something like a little bit wrong with me, because everyone else seemed to connect so effortlessly with people, and I didn't. I remember when I was like age 3 or 4. I have a bit of a weird memory. I was like 3 or 4. I remember like looking around the playground, and everyone having like a pair. Right, it's like 2 of my best friends, that they were twins and they always hung around together. And it's like everyone seemed to have like that one best friend. And I was like, but I don't have that. And so I always felt like I really struggled with it. And what I've found is, as I've improved the relationship with myself, I've massively improved my ability to have relationships with other people as well. And, it's when you go on that journey of improving the relationship with yourself, what you do is you have to have very real and open, honest conversations with yourself, right? As we already mentioned. And when you do that and it becomes something you regularly do, naturally those kind of topics come up when you're speaking to people, right? So you go from saying, oh, like, how was your dinner? How does the food taste, right? How was your day at work? All those kind of generic things. You go from that to saying, hey, like, it's like, Yasmin, I love your feminine energy. You like radiate when you speak and when you spend time with you. Have you always been that way? And it's like you're not going to get a generic answer from asking someone something like that.
It's the best compliment I've received all week.
You're welcome. But it's true, right?
Thank you.
But so it's again, it's based on that truth, right? Because it's like, if I was just like, oh, Yasmina, like, I love your biceps. Wow. It's like, holy shit. Like, how did you do that? It's like, there's a big difference between like a sincere compliment or you're observing someone you like about, observing something you like about someone is a huge difference from just going like, oh, Yasmina, you're very pretty, and it's coming from a place of sincere curiosity, because it's like, for example, I get a lot of compliments on my energy, right? because I can speak to people especially if the mood is low in a room, I like to try and bring it up, and people compliment me on that. And I've thought about that, right? It's like, where did that come from for me? Again, it's to do with my childhood. I was listening to, like earlier today, I was listening to a interview Jimmy Carr, who's like a big world famous comedian. Very funny. He's probably my favorite comedian. And this was on Stephen Bartlett's CEO Diaries podcast, if anyone wants to listen to it. And, Jimmy Carr is a really smart guy. It's like he's Cambridge educated, private schooled, a very, very successful guy, former like McKinsey consultant, all that kind of stuff. And, he was saying in that interview, and I think he goes much more in depth in it in his book, he was saying the ability to change the state of a room comes from his childhood. Because he had a lot of shit happening in his childhood. And to compensate for that and to reduce that negative impact on him, what he did was he kind of picked up this ability, to control people's moods, right? Or influence people's moods. So there's all that kind of stuff. But it's, at least the way I think about it is, it comes from genuinely caring about people. And when you've gone on a very intimate or deep journey with yourself and getting to know yourself, and then you see things in other people and you go, oh shit, like I now realize that so many of these things, it's like, when, I don't know, like a guy is just, I don't know, like he's got like a big, like gym body, right? He looks very athletic, and some people are like, wow, like he's so like naturally just strong. But it's like, he probably wasn't, right? It's like very few people start out the way they are today. And a lot of the time it's intentionally done. So like perhaps that guy was picked on as a kid. And he went on this journey of like, shit, like I want to become big and strong. And now he's the biggest guy in the gym. And people are almost afraid of him because he's, like he's picking up a 50-pound dumbbell as if it's nothing, And I think when you realize that and you see that in other people, and you're willing to be open about it yourself, and you have those deeper conversations where it's like, hey, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I mentioned, like I was always really naughty in school. Like there was one year where I was because we used to get like behavior points, right? It was a bad thing. And I was the worst behaved student in my year group.
Congratulations.
Right? Thank you. It was a very proud moment. And because I remember being told that I got pulled out my classroom, and they were like, based on your like report card, you are the worst behaved student. I was like, fuck, like how did I get here? But I mentioned that to someone, and I mentioned that because I was badly behaved in school, a lot of like my friends' parents and stuff, they didn't want me hanging out with them because I was a bad influence. And he was like, holy shit, same. And he just completely opened himself up about his school experience and how it made it. Because again, that's part of the reason why I struggle to connect with people, because I just didn't have the opportunities because I wasn't invited to things. I wasn't invited to the birthday party because the parents were afraid I'd grab the cupcakes and smear them on the wall or some shit, age 14. But it's stuff like that, and it's, so if I was to say the two fundamental things, it's going on that journey yourself and getting to know yourself really deeply, so you see and recognize in others. And then secondly, it's being willing to be open and share yourself. Because when you share, people reciprocate, because people are longing for connection. Like people are begging for it. Because like, think about like you go through your life, if you live somewhere like London, right? You wake up, whether you're with a partner or self, doesn't matter too much, right? You might like have breakfast, you say hi, wish them have a good day, get on the tube or something or a bus, you go to work, you say good morning, you walk past. Everything's so surface level and superficial all the time. Like you do your corporate job, or you work in a cafe or whatever it is you do. And then you go home and you sit down. How was your day? Yeah, my day was good. Thank you. How was yours? Yeah, it was good. There was this jerk in the office. Sit down, you watch a movie, you go to bed. There's no connection there.
So true. And true connection is only formed from that place of vulnerability, because when you open up and are vulnerable and are honest, you know yourself and you're willing to share, that
Yeah.
creates a safe environment where it's like, okay, now the other person feels comfortable to share as well, because you've now gone beyond the superficial or the fake, how's everything going? Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's great, or whatever. And it's like, you're
Good.
getting to that place of realness. And when you can be real first, people will be real back with you. And one thing I've noticed about you, Tim, is you're so great at building really fast, deep rapport with people. Like it's a really incredible superpower that you have there. And a big part of that is that opening up and that vulnerability.
Yeah.
In terms of relationships, I would also love to know, how do you go about creating win-win situations?
Yeah. So, something which I kind of do this deliberately, right? A lot of what we discussed is I've been through a journey and I've integrated things. With creating win-win situations, it's, you need to understand the person you're speaking to, understand what they value, what their goals are, what they're working on, and then going, well, like, how can I contribute to that? Because in some ways, it might just be someone's having a bit of a shit day. And if you can help them, this is a thought that comes from Omar. Okay. So this is not my thought, but it's an amazing thought. And that is Omar, who is one of myself and Yasmina's mutual friends, good friends. And Omar is just like an incredible thinker, an incredible guy. And a thought that he shared with me is, he was like, when you're speaking to someone, for you to be perceived as valuable to them, you have to give them value. But because of temporal discounting, which is where people overvalue things in the short term, they don't value things enough in the long term. You have to be valuable in the short term, because that's what people are going to like really appreciate. So it's like, if you can be funny, or if you can give good emotions, or it's just like, it's a positive experience spending time with you, then people are going to be like, oh, I like that person, and they're going to be more comfortable and they're going to open up to you, because they start seeing you as more than just like a external thing in the environment. They're going to start seeing you as oh shit, like that's a person. I'm interested in that person because like I'm recognizing them, making me feel good. And then once you kind of help them achieve some of that short-term value, and you start finding out about, okay, like, what are your longer term things that you're doing and working on? Now, when you say, hey man, like, you're saying that you're trying to, start a business. I know a fantastic group or, consultants, or, like, I'm happy to share my journey experience with that. See if I can help you. I've gone and I've achieved this, so I may be able to contribute. People are like, oh shit, like, that'd actually be really cool, which would be a very different thing to like, your Uber driver. If they were just like, oh, I could help you out with that. It's like, they're not going to value that as much, because an Uber driver is, again, a transactional relationship, very surface level. But it's like, if you can really understand the values of a person, what they're working on, you can demonstrate your short-term value, which people will appreciate because of temporal discounting. And then you can find some way to contribute in the longer term, which, things like introductions work amazingly. Just sharing what you're working on in your journey works amazingly. Those would be like the two main things that I do, to be honest. Or just saying, hey, like, with the skill sets that I've developed, I'll be happy to take a look at whatever you're working on and see how I can suggest you improve it. Those are the three things that I do. And people tend to appreciate it, and the more you do it over a longer period of time, you get better, and you'll start to build relationships with very cool people. And this is one of the things that you're amazing at, Yasmin. And it's like, okay, cool. So now I can do some of the same things, but just at a higher level. So it's like one of the clients that we work with in my business is we work with a famous US rapper, right? Very, very cool guy, super smart, like entrepreneur, business mind, a very cool guy. And I introduced him to someone that we both know, who's also like a musician, 8-figure entrepreneur, all that kind of stuff. And they got along really, really well. And they had loads of commonalities. And they both appreciated it, you know? And it's just the same stuff. It's just applied at a higher level, you know? And I've done the same shit. So it's like again, another one of our clients, they're a fitness equipment company. And someone that we've worked with in the past is a former UFC MMA coach, right? I was like, oh, it'd be quite cool if I was to connect those two and have the fitness equipment, which is mainly focused around boxing, and we could get some of those UFC stars promoting the stuff. Now, and what's the value generated there? Was there's literal tangible monetary value generated because they're going to increase sales and all that kind of stuff. So they're going to really appreciate because the sales. The UFC guy is going to really appreciate it because he'll get paid and all that kind of stuff, And it's like, are people happy to give me a percentage of the money that's made and the value that's generated? Yes. Right. Which obviously helps me in a business context, but they also appreciate it because they're like, shit, now we have videos and content of amazing things that are an asset for our business that we can use for another 3-5 years.
And now everyone's thinking, oh, how can I help Tim? And then you don't ask for anything until something comes up, and then they'll be more than happy to contribute, or they'll be trying to find ways to contribute back. Not everyone will, but a lot of people will if you live your life that way, which is really incredible. In terms of the whole people thing as well, I know something that you've been working really hard on with is sales and diving really deeply into that. And I've definitely learned some interesting insights from you that I haven't really heard in these kinds of big sales spaces. And I would love to hear about your sales journey and some of the biggest key things that you've learned when it comes to sales.
Yeah. So I'm in a very lucky situation where I have a lot of absolutely incredible salespeople in my network who are willing to help me and coach me. Some of them I pay, some of them I don't, right? So as a person, currently I'm spending well over $1,500 a month USD on different coaching, both for business and sales and other stuff. And, so one of the biggest breakthroughs that I realized about sales is not like so many people see sales as like a transactional thing where it's like, hey, I'm trying to get someone to do something. It's not really about that. Sales is about connection, right? It's like, oh shit, we've just been talking about that, but it's the same stuff. Because if I can speak to you and I'm like, hey, there's me, I can say, hey, what are you trying to do in your business? And you can go, oh, I want to bring on X number of clients or sell X number of products or whatever that may be. And I'm like, cool. And then we can discuss, so we can discuss those numbers that we were talking about ages ago. And we can come up with that journey, sure. But how emotionally compelling is that for you? It's like, kind of. I know. Whereas if we have a conversation, I'm like, hey, what made you start your business? How did you get into this? And he's like, oh yeah, I could talk about my own journey, right? So it's like, oh yeah, I was working at this and it was good, but I'd also been helping all these people and the money and all that kind of stuff. And so I started the business. It's like, okay, cool. That makes sense. And what are you trying to do with the business? Are you just trying to, is there something you want to build and you want to sell it? And you want to retire age 30 into the French Riviera in a villa? Is that what you're trying to do? Are you trying to build something like cash flow where it allows you to travel and go see Southeast Asia? Are you just trying to build a business that allows you to make a decent income while you can also be there for your family? Or whatever it may be, right? There's so many variations. And people share it. People are excited to share. I started this startup and we're kind of going for VC funding and we're trying to build a business that in 5 to 8 years, we can exit when it goes to IPO and we can make X amount of money. It's like, cool. And what does that do for you? And you're going deeper and deeper and deeper. And what we're trying to find is what's the real reason why you're doing what you're doing? Because if I'm just trying to sell you on hey, if I'm like, oh, cool, let's do Facebook ads to make you, $20,000 more profit this month. It's like, that's kind of exciting, sure, but it doesn't really matter to a person. Whereas if it's, hey, let's do Facebook advertising to get you $20,000 a month, which is going to get you one step closer to that early retirement, where you can then focus on spending time with your family, because your dad was someone who was very successful but never spent any time in the home. And so you don't want to repeat the same mistakes as your father. So rather than going off and being an investment banker and working 100 hours a week, instead you're building a business that you can then basically automate or you can sell. And that's going to enable you to be at home in 5 years' time, which is when you're planning to start your family. Let's go and do that. And that is a very different reason or rationale for why someone chooses to work with you than I want $20,000 more in sales. There's a huge difference. Some other things, it might be something like, a lot of people talk about objections in sales, and it's like an objection you need to like isolate and capture and overcome logically. It's like, sure, but fundamentally with sales, what you're trying to do, and this again, sales is just about relationships, in my opinion. And this is becoming increasingly firm for me. It's like, it's not about tricking someone or influencing them. It's just like, no, it's like you build a relationship with the person. So it's about, for someone to choose to work with you, they need two things fundamentally. You need professional trust. So they trust in your competency and your ability to do the work. And personal trust. Like they trust that you're going to do your best. You're reliable. You're not going to take their money and run off. Right? It's about just building those two forms of trust. And again, there's ways and means to do that. But if you can build those two forms of trust, it's like, will someone choose to work with you? It's like, oh, why wouldn't they? They trust that they can do the results. You can get the results. And they trust that you're a good person and you're not going to fuck them over and you're going to do everything you can to make it work. It's like, that's pretty much the whole picture, right? The only thing would be is like, can they afford it? But it's, if they have an objection that's anything other than, like, you want to charge me $5,000 a month and I literally have $4,500 in my bank account, so I can't afford to pay that. That's the only legitimate objection that there is. Everything else is just resistance, or that they're pushing back because they don't trust you in one of those two ways.
That's so profound. That makes 100% sense. I've never thought about it in those specific terms before, but I love the way that you break that down, and it makes so much sense. And I love what you say about sales is about relationships. It's really about building those relationships with people. It's not about like, oh, I'm going to tie you down, the tie down. I'm going to tie you down into this thing and make you say yes. So I'm going to trick you into saying it. No, it's like,
yeah.
Hey, like, how can we really help you? And when you understand that, when you go deeper and deeper and deeper and you understand that core driver value and you build that relationship and that rapport and that trust, that's a really, really powerful thing.
Yeah. And it's, imagine you tie someone down and now you've got to work with them for the next 6 months. And it's like, is that how you want the relationship to start? Or do you want to start the relationship where you're both excited by it? You fully, like, someone signs up with you or they purchase from you or whatever that context for your business looks like. And, you've set the correct expectations. You've not oversold it. You're saying, look, like, this is a new business that you're trying to start. We don't know if the marketing and the advertising is going to work. We don't know. And we can do everything that we can, but there's still no guarantees. Like, this is a risk. It's business, And so you set very firm expectations, for example, right? And you have a good working relationship and you understand where you're both coming from and what's important. You understand, like, why are they working with me? If we want to expand it, so rather than just being like about like a sales call, we can talk about more like sales, right? So, for example, we could talk about, okay, so someone chooses not to work with you. They're going to work with someone else, just because they felt better about it or the pricing or whatever it may be. Excuse me. And so that's like, okay, so they choose to work with someone else. Do you just let them go and just like you never speak to them again? Or do you keep open dialogue with them? Do you send them an email or a message or however you have them, give them a call in 6 weeks' time? It's like, hey, how's it going? Like, is it going well? I hope it's going well. And you find some way to kind of add value to them, right? Whether that be, I don't know, you found that this particular tactic's working very well for your clients, for example, and you just let them know about it. It's like, hey, like we put this thing together, just like you might want to take a look. Perhaps you send it to whoever's doing your ads for you. Might work out well, because it's like most in my space, right? Most agencies don't retain a client for longer than 3 months. And so anyone that chooses not to work with me, chances are in 3 months' time, they're going to be looking for someone else. And so it's like, well, how do you say front of mind? So they're thinking about, oh, it's Tim, it's T14 Marketing. They're thinking about it. Like it doesn't, like you're front of mind. You don't have to be harassing them or pushing them for a sale all the time. So no, like you just naturally stay front of mind. And then when they're looking to work with someone else, they're just like, well, there's Tim. He's been pretty great. I built a relationship with him now with multiple touch points all the time. And we're speaking to him and he made me feel great. I spoke to him that time, like a couple of weeks ago, and he's been sending me a few emails, and now we have a relationship. And so it's like, do I trust him? Well, yeah, I feel pretty good. He's been helping me out. Like he took a look at my ads, for example, even though it's not his agency, and he told me a couple of ways to improve it, and we did it, and it worked. He didn't charge for that. Like he just helped this other agency do our ads, and we're not happy with that other agency. So are we going to feel good about going and working with Tim? Well, yeah, we are. So and that's sales. It's not about sitting there on a sales call and again persuading someone to do anything. You're a good person. You provide genuine value. You're honest and upfront about everything you're doing. It's like, hey, if you want to work with us in the future, you can. I'll be happy to help you out. Like often I'll be speaking to someone and they genuinely don't have the money, or their business is not in the correct position where it makes sense for them to work with us because we're quite premium what we do, and we help businesses grow quite rapidly. And some businesses aren't in a position where it makes sense for them to work with us. But I'm like, hey, like, that's fine. If you want, so I know you mentioned you're looking at a couple other people. If you send me a brief kind of like bio or their websites or whatever it may be for these people, I'll be happy to have a quick look at them. And because you're not like a knowledgeable buyer in this space. So what I can do is I can just be like, hey, that person looks not very credible. These other two look good. So whichever one of those two you pick, most likely probably going to work out quite well. It's like all those things. And it's like, I'm just genuinely trying to help people. And so does that build trust? Is that going to help me with sales? Well, of course it is. Because
Definitely.
People, when they're around me, they make money.
And everyone loves to do that.
Everyone does love to do that.
It's all about those true relationships and true connections and adding value and honesty. And it's just about how can you be a high value person that really wants to help people out and make a difference. And I love the way that you broke that down, Tim. I think it's going to be really valuable for a lot of people. So my last question to you, Tim, is what is one question that you wish I'd asked, and how would you have answered it? Ooh.
Now that is a good question. What is one question that I wish you'd asked? My brain's a little bit like a search engine. So I mean, everyone's is. But it's like when I'm asked a question, I come up with answers and I can create systems. When I'm asked to create the question, I'll be a little bit slower. I would say it's. I think values is very important. We touched on that and we discussed it a little bit. Well, I think values is probably one of the most underrated things in life by the general population. And the process and the journey of developing those values is a very long and complicated thing. And I'm actually going to change my answer, by the way. So I'm going to make sure the podcast editor cuts this section. So I'm going to change it. Can you re-ask the question? I'll make sure this gets cut.
Sure.
So I've got a really good answer.
Sure. So my last question for you, Tim, is what is one question that you wish I had asked you, and how would you have answered?
I would say, that's a really good question, by the way. I would say, what is the biggest thing that most people struggle with? I think that's because that's a big question, right? And I was asked this recently, and I try and help a lot of people. I try and do that because I receive a tremendous amount of help from a tremendous amount of people. I try and give back in equal part. And something I see a lot of people doing, like these people, like they're trying to work hard. They're trying to, for example, build a business, and it's not working. Or, we've just gone through the new year. You get a lot of people where they set New Year's resolution, and they're like, this year's going to be different. And it ends up being the same. Why does that happen? Like that's a really big thing that I've been thinking about. And it's a pattern that I see in so many people. And the reason I think that happens is I think people get overwhelmed. So people try and do too much at once. That's too far away from who they are. And they set expectations that's way too high. And then they start falling behind, or they miss it one time, or things don't work out. And the whole thing just crumbles down because they get overwhelmed. They get very stressed, right? And most people are going through living a life where, there's so much they feel that they should be doing all the time. Like, I should be going to the gym. I should be calling my mom. Everything's like I should be. And there's so many like I should be's. There becomes no room on the list for like what I am actually doing. And I see this all the time where people go, okay, I'm going to try to do something. Doesn't work out. They start to resent themselves because it's not working out. And it fails. And the biggest thing that I think people can do is, I heard Travis Green talk about this on, again, a friend of ours podcast, JJ Baker, at the Cause. And I think have you been on that podcast? Yes.
I have, yeah. JJ's awesome.
JJ's awesome. And Travis was talking about weights. And it's like, if someone goes to the gym, or if someone's like, if someone comes to the gym with me, and they're like, yeah, I wanna do 100 kilo, which is 220 pound bench press, right? So okay, that's a goal. We can work on that. And it's like people go to the gym and they try and pick up a weight and they can't lift it. And it's like, shit, like what do I do? And so many people, like, they try and lift it, or they try and do it like once and it doesn't work out. And they're like, fuck. And they hate themselves and they resent themselves because they can't pick up that weight. Like, that's not how you go to the gym. The way you go to the gym is you try and pick up a weight. And if you can't pick it up, you go to a lower weight. And you keep going to a lower weight. Even if all you can do is the bar. And if you can't do the bar, then you just lay and you do the action, right? Until, for example, like if you can't do a pull-up, you literally just hold yourself in a pull-up position and you let yourself down slowly. So even if you can't do a pull-up, you can still do something and you can still see progress. And so like the one thing that I think people, when someone's trying, that's the necessary assumption for this. When someone's trying to improve themselves or trying to do something, start a business, get in shape, improve diet, all that kind of stuff. If someone's trying to do that and it's not working, you need to lower your expectations dramatically. And you be like, hey, like, I did better today than I did yesterday, which is better than I did a week ago or 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. And, even if a year ago I thought by now I'd be bench pressing 100 kilos, it's like, even if I've only built up to 50 kilos, I'm still doing significantly better than I could have done a year ago. And I feel pretty good about that. And that starts linking back into self-esteem and positive self-esteem. And because you've been building positive work habits where you're positively reinforced and you feel good about yourself and all that kind of stuff. And people fall into these patterns of bad work habits where they create a to-do list and they never do it. And the habit that they build is not doing the things they say they're going to do, Whereas it's like, what if you set really low expectations, but you did it every day? And whatever you put on that list, it could be really easy stuff like wake up, make my bed. But you make sure religiously, without exception, you do those things. And then over time, you can raise the bar slightly and you can see how it goes. And if you start failing consistently, you need to drop the bar back down again. But over time, you gradually do it and you can tolerate more and more pressure. It's a concept that is talked about in Relentless by Tim Grover, a book. He talks about the difference between pressure and stress. And stress comes from when the pressure gets too high and it just crushes you. Whereas when you slowly increase over time, pressure can also make diamonds. So you need to be in that position where you don't get crushed, but you can slowly increase the bar. And that's the one thing you can do. And because it applies at all levels, where that's going to help you achieve the thing you're looking to do.
100%. And I've definitely struggled with setting goals that are way too high. And so many people do that, and just allowing yourself to be, instead of like new year, new me, sudden drastic change, just little incremental changes over time to be able to build that faith and trust in yourself and see progress happen over time is a foolproof strategy. So really powerful. So Tim, what would you like to plug and where can people find you?
I don't really have anything to plug as such. If someone wants to connect with me, you can connect with me on Instagram at Tim Highnam, which is at TimHighnam. I'm also starting my own podcast, which is called Path to CEO, which you'll be able to find on all major streaming platforms. And beyond that, if you or somebody you're a business owner, you're looking at paid advertising, which is predominantly the bulk of what we do, feel free to go to T14Marketing.com, T14Marketing.com. And you can have a look at what we do. And if you're interested, reach out. I'll be happy to have a conversation.
Amazing, Tim. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation. You definitely dropped a lot of value here, and really glad that I got the chance to chat with you today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, guys.